I'd like to have a motion to open up the public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All that in favor?
Aye. Chair, did you designate Mr. Valcourt?
That's what I'm going to do right now as in the open forum. Right now, we have Scott McKay and Dave are going to be absent this evening, so I'm going to designate Jeff Valcourt, who's on the phone, to sit in on each one of these cases tonight. Or do I have to designate it every one, Jeff? Is it
You can designate him to sit for the entire meeting.
sit for the entire meeting? Okay, all right. Do we have any open forum items for tonight, Joe?
The only thing I'll mention is this Friday, we're going to have a lunch and learn event for our folks that are 55 plus over at the Senior Center. So if you want to learn more about MBTA communities, ask you to RSVP for that. So you can sign up and get some lunch and be able to learn more about the MBTA communities bylaw going in front of town meeting on March 23rd at 9 a.m.
I'm confused. Is that tomorrow or Friday?
Friday.
Oh, I thought it was tomorrow. Okay. I'm mixed. I'm glad.
23rd.
I would have showed up
February
tomorrow.
23rd. So it'll be exactly 1 month
It's
before
Friday. Okay.
town
All right.
meeting.
All right.
So next, would like to review the draft of the meetings. Does anybody have any additions or deletions to the January 17th meeting?
Move to approve.
Second. All right, we'll have to have a roll call. Hey, Jeff, do you approve the the meetings for the 17th? Dan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
And I will vote yes, too. That takes care of that. All right, so the first item on our agenda today is 288 Littleton Road, Unit 13. It's a public hearing to consider an application of Ronald Camara for a special permit pursuant to Appendix A of the Westford zoning bylaw to allow for a body art establishment. Do I have a motion to open up the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I vote yes, too. For the record, could you just introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Catherine McDonald, the applicant's representative, 10 Appaloosa Circle, Tingsboro.
Ronald Camara, 10 Appaloosa Circle, Tingsboro.
Okay, good. So, could you just kind of explain what you are trying to do here for the special permit? And
Yes, yep. So Ronald wanted to request a special permit to open up a custom body art and permanent cosmetic private tattoo business located at 288 Littleton Road, Unit 13. We understand we requesting the special permit because it's in a commercial highway zoning district. So what we would be offering is body art and permanent cosmetics, which includes like brow, lip, eyeliner, microblade, and saline tattoo removal.
What was the last part of it? You said, was it
Saline tattoo removal?
removal?
Yes.
No tattooing, just removal.
No, it's tattooing too,
Yeah.
body art tattooing.
Body art tattooing as
Yep,
well,
and
okay.
permanent cosmetic tattooing, which is the brow, the lip, the eyeliner, microblade, and then also including saline tattoo removal.
Okay.
so I assume you're well aware of the Westford body art regulations, right? that
Yes,
you're dealing
yes,
with
we went over
right?
that.
Okay,
Yes.
I know you've been, there's correspondence going between you and the Board of Health, I take it, is that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. I guess some of the items are the hours that you're looking to have your establishment open? Is that?
Yes, yeah. So we put down the hours Monday through Friday, 11 to 9, and Saturday, 9 to 5. This is a private body art studio, meaning there's one person in the space at a time with the customer. And it's by appointment only. So it's not something that would be open 7 days a week, like consecutively between the hours of 11 and 9. It's only by appointment, so on the client's need.
So you would only have one person in there at a time then? Okay.
Yeah, we are putting 2 chairs in the space, and we are going to divide it off with a removable divider that partitions off the seating area from the practitioner's workspace and also in between the 2 chairs, but there'll never be 2 artists at the same time in the space. What we're trying to do is create it for a space for the practitioner and the client to be in there with no other invited guests. It's just by appointment.
So it'd be just you and the client
That's
at that
correct.
time? Okay. And we saw the layout for the chairs, so it's approximately, how many square feet is that then, I guess, or is that?
It's 355 square feet.
355, okay. And so where you have the 2 chairs on this drawing, is that where it's gonna be all the time, or is it that's just?
Yeah, so given the space, we weren't exactly sure, we took a look at it, but, this is one open studio. There's a private bathroom in there.
Okay.
So, we figured like off to the right by the closet would be like a seating area where we'll probably put 1 or 2 chairs just to suffice, the space. And then, probably side by side and putting the divider in the middle. So we weren't exactly sure how it was.
Okay, but the intent is to just only have 2 chairs?
Yes.
And this floor plan is pretty much, it could change, but it's gonna be pretty much what it's gonna be like.
Yeah, and we're not doing any existing construction inside, or on the exterior of the building besides signage.
Say it again, with signage, what we're gonna be doing?
Besides signage, like putting signage out on the property owner has like, a signboard
Right.
that is by the road.
Right.
And so that's where we would put our
All right, so
little,
that's where your sign's gonna go there?
Yeah,
Okay, all right,
exactly.
fine. As far as parking goes, it doesn't sound like there's gonna be an issue. You're probably only gonna have yourself.
Line at a time.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, okay.
Yeah, and there's entrance and exits to Power Road and Littleton Road, so I don't foresee it being a problem at all, and safety-wise, I don't see it being a
It's a
problem.
pretty good sized parking lot.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
and we've, actually kind of scoped out the area at different times throughout the day and evening, just to see, because there's a multi-use, businesses within the
multiple.
building itself, so we were just trying to see, how that would do, so we went at different times throughout the day.
So I guess some of the other businesses in that complex, you mentioned that they're pretty consistent what you have there now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's one other thing here I saw in the packet about a floor plan, Joe, or that the building inspector wanted us to waive that or something. Is that?
Oh, the
So
plot
there's the
plan.
request to waive the plot plan, so because there's no interior changes, there's no exterior changes to the parking lot or any landscaping
Yeah.
or anything like that, there's a request to waive the plot plan, before you, so, before you make any kind of decision, whether to continue the matter or to make a decision tonight, you should also act on one that you
We can
wanna
put that in as one
waive
of the
plot
conditions.
plan
All right, okay.
requirement.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
good.
Okay.
Good.
All right. And the only other item, I know there was a lot of correspondence with Erin back and forth too. There's something about disposing of or a shop container or whatever.
We have sharp containers.
Yeah,
We would be
okay.
using those. And everything I use is disposable. And I would probably have an autoclave on site as well, but everything nowadays tattooing wise is little cartridges, immediate, one side of the package, throw it into the sharps container.
One use.
One use only.
And then, as far as I put a little excerpt in there for the, pigment itself. It's nothing that's gonna be dumped into a sink and have to worry about that. There is a solidifier that we use that we put into the pigment that solidifies the liquid
biohazard
solution.
waste, yeah.
Yeah, and it gets thrown into a biohazard bag.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Anybody on the board have any more
Seems pretty
questions?
straightforward. I don't know if there's any.
I just have one general question, like, I assume you're the artist.
Yes, sir.
Are you the only artist that would be working down there?
Tattoo artist, yes.
Okay, now, are you guys, do you have to be licensed by the Commonwealth?
Yes, it's the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, and so I assume you have that license?
Yes, I've been professionally tattooing 14 years,
Okay,
from New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
okay.
And actually, I would be there for the permanent cosmetic part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So will you guys be taking the waste off-site? Will you have a dumpster on-site? How will you dispose of it once you?
We would hire a company to come and take the biohazard waste, yeah. They'll pick it up. We have looked into different contracts and everything. We didn't sign anything until everything is
It's the
finalized.
same company that would be taking the Sharps containers.
Yeah,
It's like a waste management or
Yeah.
something like that.
yes,
okay.
exactly.
Anything else, guys? No?
Any,
Is there anybody in the audience to speak in favor of this proposal, hearing? Could you please just come to the mic and state your name, please, for the record?
All right.
My name is Donna Witt Henderson, and I live at 400 Prospect Street, number 2 in Leominster. And I, too, am a body art tattoo artist and cosmetic tattoo. And I was the first in Leominster. So I brought, we had to get everything done. But Catherine and her son, they're not going to be working together. They're going to be, when Catherine is with her client, he's with his client. They're totally separate. And that's the only reason that there's 2 waiting room chairs is because it's required, by Board of Health and the petition. That's the only reason. My waiting room chairs have never been sat in. So I'm in support of this because this is the way of the world, Anyway, thank you for listening to them.
thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody to speak in opposition to the? Not seeing anything. Guess we're ready to close the meeting.
Yeah, I moved to
Get a
close.
motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. Know if we really need to put hours down on it. Do you guys think, it seems pretty open, there's only gonna be one, yeah, I don't,
You said 11 to 9?
Yeah.
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 I also work, I'm sorry if I may speak, I also work a full-time too, so it would be pretty much same, I'd be the nighttime clientele.
Excuse me, we should be careful about accepting additional testimony after you close
Okay.
the public
Oh.
hearing.
Sorry.
11 to 9, we're okay with.
It was
that?
That was okay, the hours.
And
Yeah, I think the
I
hours.
think, if you were to put the condition as put forth by the applicant, we could also provide language if they ever needed to come back. They could come back to this board during a public meeting, not a public hearing, if they need changes.
All right. But we can go with 11 to 9 and the 9 to 5.
That's what was in the
Yeah, all right,
petition.
so that gives that pretty good leeway. And condition on the 2 chairs with the existing floor plan, the floor plan, they could change that, but we want to leave that to 2 chairs though, right? So,
I mean, again, it could be, subject to what was said, and if they want to make any minor changes or any changes in the future, they could come back during a public meeting. Otherwise, it's going to be governed by the Board of Health. So,
all right.
Falls under the Board of Health, doesn't
Yep,
it?
all right, all right. So the only condition I have probably is the hours, if you guys are okay with that, or if you can think of anything else?
Yeah, the hours as presented.
Okay.
And the, what was the other one,
The waiver of the,
Oh, the
plot-
waiver of
plot
the
plan.
plot plan.
Yeah.
amenable to
Plan
that.
inspected, yeah.
yeah, that can be included in the decision, I'm sure.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's, looks pretty straightforward to me.
yeah. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And I'll vote in approval too also. So the staff has 2 weeks to submit the decision.
Okay.
And then from there, there's a 30-day appeal period, so somebody could appeal
21.
it.
20.
21.
21
days.
Sorry, oh,
Yeah.
Jesus. Sorry. There's 21-day appeal period. So somebody could appeal that decision if they want. So if you probably wouldn't want to wait to do anything after that 21-day period. Okay? All right. All right.
Thank you,
Good luck.
thank you.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Good luck.
You're welcome, good luck.
We're all here for to help each other.
All right, so the next item is 113 Lowell Road. Public hearing to consider an application of Rebecca O'Hearn for a special permit pursuant to section 3.3.2 of the Westford zoning bylaw to allow for the construction of an approximate 570 square foot accessory dwelling unit. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. So, for the record, could you just state your name and,
Hi, Rebecca O'Hearn. I'm the applicant and property owner.
I'm Melissa Wilkinson, I'm her mother.
oh, okay.
And of the proposed AD unit is gonna be for me.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you. So could you just explain to us what you plan on doing?
Here for plans?
Sure. So, I'm sorry. Were you asking?
Yeah. Someone can dem-
So the proposal was to add an AD unit for my mom to age in place onto our property. Looking at the other sites in the area, we thought that the aesthetic of just a simple two-car garage to conceal the ADU would fit in most seamlessly with the rest of the neighborhood.
So looks like you're gonna be adding a garage then? Is that, I guess, could you maybe
Yes.
just explain a little? So,
The ADU above the garage?
The ADU would be above the garage, correct. So it would be the addition of a small mudroom and a two-car garage. Currently on the property, we don't have a garage or any of that, and so this would be a shared garage between my husband and I and my mom with 2 additional parking spaces in a reconfigured driveway.
and then, so obviously that's the ADU. With the garage right there, so the ADU is gonna be on top of that garage right there that you have showing?
With an entry passageway?
Dana McKeel from Integrity Building, I'm the contractor
Okay.
doing the work.
All right, good. Give us a rundown.
Here's your existing house right here.
Yep.
Then there's a mudroom, this is the new part. There's a mudroom here with a 2-car garage and the ADU up on the second floor,
Okay.
Okay.
as far as that goes. So this, again, on plot plan, is the existing home.
Yep.
It's 32 feet away on the left-hand side of the property. It's 41 feet from the new 2-car garage, mudroom addition, and ADU, and we're 76 feet from the front of the street. So there's
Setback.
plenty of setbacks. There's nothing. The only real reason they're in front of us is just because they don't have 200 feet of frontage. They have 140 feet of frontage.
Yep, so it's pre-existing.
Pre-existing condition.
Yep.
As far as that. So that's.
How about the septic?
Septic's been redone.
Was new in 2012. It's a 5-bedroom septic. We
Okay.
currently have 3 bedrooms on site, and we just got a Title V last month.
Yeah, it sounds like there was some confusion, that they thought there was an additional
Building?
building there, yeah, with water and stuff.
Yes, my understanding is that there was previously another 2-unit home on the property, but that was demolished before we purchased the property in 2012.
So there's just the shed, right, and the other,
Yeah, the only other building on the property is a shed.
and what are you gonna get rid of that pavement there then, is that, okay?
I'm sorry?
You were gonna remove that pavement that you have there between the shed and the
Yeah,
house, is
so
that?
there's approximately 1,900 square feet of existing pavement that we're proposing to remove. A portion of that is on conservation land or within a riverfront buffer area. So last week we met with Conscom and they were in favor of moving forward with the project to remove that asphalt and put in impervious.
Yeah, for the plans, very nice plans, so. I don't think I had any.
How many square foot is, somewhere it
Yeah,
says there was 715 square feet and then.
The
Yeah,
entire
this says-
additional living area, the ADU itself will be 570.
And then the total-
715 adds up because of that mudroom addition.
It ends up to 800 and something?
Yeah.
Yeah, because officially it said 715
It
in
said
the
715 and it came to
application.
8 something, so that's what, okay.
The plot plan that we have has the garage footprint and the mudroom listed at 815, but the conditioned space is gonna be smaller than that because of the roof configuration.
Okay.
So there's a portion of that shed roof that's not conditioned.
So we should just reference that it's the 816, right, not the 715, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
8 to 16, I think it said somewhere.
I think that's when you combine the apartment.
Yeah.
They could do the mudroom in the garage. Or
Well,
raise
the
it.
garage doesn't
Wouldn't it
count,
ju-
right?
Wouldn't it
Just the mudroom would count for the extra
well, is
square
that,
footage, right?
is that part of the square footage, or is it just the,
Yes, it is.
it is, okay.
Yeah, I understand.
That square footage is only, the 876 is total square footage, but the ADU itself is only 576.
Right.
Right.
It's a mudroom that's gonna be used by.
Right.
The 816 includes the mudroom and the ADU.
Just
over 900, so they're good.
Yeah, that's clear.
Perfect.
And the decision presumably would make reference to the
the
plans that
plans,
calls
yeah.
out the different
Well, that's what I'm
areas.
saying, we reference that, because the 816 is on the plan, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we
So
can do that.
all that information will be there, yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
I think so,
Does anybody else have anything? No?
No, looks good.
Clean.
Is anybody in the audience here in favor of the project? You can come to the mic, please, and
Hi, I'm Lisa Tiernan and I live across the street. I just had a question. It looks like the garage is kind of a little bit behind the house. Is that right? Okay. And you said something about the driveway, but I didn't catch it. The
Oh, see in the back where it says shed? Well, let me do this.
yeah, that, oh yeah, I see that, yeah, okay.
So what's happening is this. See this area right here? Is
Yeah.
existing pavement?
Oh, okay, yeah,
And it's just male grass.
okay.
As far as that
But the regular driveway
goes.
stays,
The regular driveway's gonna stay the same way.
okay,
as
that was
far
my
as that goes.
question.
There'll be a turnaround that's added.
All right,
That's just so when you get out, it's a busy street, so for safety, your car will turn around and then pull out.
okay,
As far as that goes.
okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question?
could you please state, sir, hey, sir, could you please state your name?
But I think we could have talked about more things. And not said-
Sir, if you
Sir,
could
could you
please state your name.
Sorry, okay.
Record.
I get, the question I have is, I just noticed that the driveway extended more area.
You're gonna say your name first.
Greg Chandler, 116 Lowell Road, right across the street. We get a lot of water, I think you know that, across the street. I mean, my whole yard floods, I think it's coming, from over your side. I'm wondering, is that considered something we can't, I mean,
Rain
there'll be a
garden.
larger area.
I think if you remove that asphalt, you're gonna have more permeable area.
Yeah.
You're moving asphalt.
Yes.
All of the
Yes.
asphalt.
Okay, I see, I'm trying, my hearing's so bad, I try to
I
pick it
think
up
the
here.
more permeable will help absorb the water better.
Okay, so that's already been looked at then?
Yep.
Okay, that's the question.
Anybody else to speak against it? No, obvious, okay. All right, so, you guys want to close the public hearing?
I think we're ready to do so. I move to close.
Second?
Jeff?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Scott?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, too.
I didn't see any name on these plans for the, maybe it's on there for the record.
The architect?
Yeah.
Hedrom.
Is that,
Rebecca did.
oh, okay, okay.
So that's
Oh,
what
okay, okay. Usually we record the plan and
Yeah,
virtual, recorded architect, so you did this?
Oh.
I did.
Very nice.
job.
Thank you.
You are the architect of
Yes.
record.
Yeah.
Good, very good.
Good.
All right,
So, we'll reference these
plans
plans,
for
right?
Rebecca?
So do I have a motion to approve
I move to approve
the ADU? Or second?
as as
Second.
per the plans.
Last second.
Oh, okay. Jeff? Hello, Jeff?
Yes, I'm here.
You vote to approve or disapprove?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, too.
Thank you.
Usually give the spiel that,
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
we'll clock a decision in.
Yeah, staff has 2 weeks to submit the decision, and then after that, there's a 21-day appeal period. So you might want to wait until that time frame to start any construction.
Roughly 30 days.
Looks good. Good luck.
Can I
Enjoy your new home.
Good.
I would believe
We
that,
can,
yeah.
we can talk up there. Joe, you wanna start the next?
All right.
General business.
Business, right? No correspondence, right?
Nope.
The only thing next is the discussion on MBTA communities.
Yep.
So we can go into as much or as little detail as you'd like.
Excuse me, do you mind if we just, thank you.
So we can go into as much or as little detail as you'd like. I can run through briefly the presentation we gave to the planning board back on January 22nd, if you'd like.
Yeah.
I'll go through that quickly.
The email you sent with all those documents looked very impressive. Yeah, that was sharp. That was good.
Yeah, we did have a lot of help from our consultant Dodson and Flinker, who was brought on through a Housing Choice Grant to help us through this process, and they've been helping us right from the middle of summer 2023. So, for those that aren't aware, MBTA communities, it's a law that was passed during the Economic Development Bill in 2021 during the Baker administration, where Westford is one of 177 communities that was identified as an MBTA community. So that means you have rail or other MBTA service within your community, or you're adjacent there too. So we're considered an adjacent community because of the service that's active. So that's how we're one of the 177 communities. Based on that designation, we have a little bit more flexibility of where our district can go than some others. And we have a different deadline than some others as well. Our deadline is the end of this calendar year, 2024. Some had it in 2023. And we have more flexibility in terms of we don't have like a transit station where we need to have a certain percentage of the district. We have pretty much carte blanche of wherever we wanted to get located. Process, we started doing outreach and strategic planning retreat 2022, trying to get feedback from all the folks that went to that event. A survey, we had around 200 responses then. And we've been going through the public planning process since. We had a advisory committee formed in May and started meeting in July. Make members of it, obviously you know Jim, you were the alternate member for this board. Scott was the appointed member from this board. Also had representation from the planning board, finance committee, economic development committee, school committee, a couple of residents at large, select board. And we've gone through this process to develop the proposed bylaw. You may have seen earlier today, it's 45 pages plus or minus. That's because there was a decision to put design guidelines within the draft bylaw so people had a clearer understanding of what could get built under this bylaw. There are certain requirements that we can have, there are certain ones that we can't. So we've been trying to utilize the bylaw to have requirements, but also incorporate flexibility. One of the things you may have noticed in there revolved around affordable housing. You are allowed to have a requirement of up to 10%, just kind of baseline. You're not required to have one, but you can have it. If you want to have something greater than 10%, there's a economic feasibility analysis that you need to do. Given our timeline, we didn't go that route, but we did build in a provision in there to allow the planning board to reduce or waive that exchange for somebody doing development and providing some other public amenities. That would be a real benefit to the town, or other types of housing that Westford has identified as a need, such as 55 plus housing or
Workforce housing.
Thank you. So we try to build in flexibility to go along with things that we can require. The district has been, a bit of a process to kind of find the right mix of how big or how little should it be. Under the mandate, we are required to have a capacity of 924 units. That's based on our year-round housing units. The MICMAC committee did struggle with, do we do the bare minimum, or do we try to just think about what is the best for the town? An earlier iteration had a unit capacity of closer to 10,000 units, which is, obviously about 10 times the size. So they did strategically look to reduce that down. So now we're at about a unit capacity of about 5,000 per the compliance model. Still a large number, but the compliance model that the state put together to try to help, assess the compliance of all 177 communities is by means not perfect. It's also not a true build-out analysis. It really just takes the area and does a times 15 units per acre. That's the required density you're supposed to have under the mandate. It doesn't factor in things like steep slopes. Like think about the Neshoba Valley ski area, which is in the district. It doesn't factor in the hill if you were to put in the entirety of their property as being not really developable. It doesn't factor in wetlands either, or in Westford there is no municipal sewer, so there's the septic needs that you would need. So it's not a true build-out analysis for Westford, and it really overinflates what the true build-out would be. So it looks like a scary number, but in reality what could actually get built is far less. So that's why the committee kind of landed in the area that they did, thinking about, more area does provide more opportunity, and they try to pick locations that were short, medium, long-term potential projects, just based on either existing leases for current businesses in the area, what's currently vacant office space, or vacant parking lots that aren't getting used, just because of changing economic times. And try to balance what, any kind of impacts there could be in terms of additional town services such as schools or what have you. So that's kind of a really brief nutshell of what the process has been. There was the public hearing opened in January. It was continued to last February 15th. Planning board is likely to close the hearing at their next meeting on March 4th, all going towards March 23rd town meeting. Not a lot of time, but we're, if there are any questions from all the materials that you saw, we're happy to answer them. I don't know if there's anything, Jeff, do you want to add?
Oh, I think that's the high level overview. We are trying, if you look between the purpose section and all the waiver opportunities that Joe mentioned, we're trying to end up with a better range or diversity of housing types. So if we didn't go through all that effort, you would likely only see multifamily apartment style buildings for rent. We're certainly still going to get those, but we're trying to encourage or promote some of those other kinds of housing that Joe was talking about. We're looking to get some housing for people to better age in place. We're looking for some smaller spaces that might be easier in terms of tax burden going forward, if people want to downsize and keep up with, the tax situation. We're trying to think about workforce housing. So, one of the surveys, we only had maybe 200 people, which is actually pretty good. Another, we had like almost 400. But the reality is most of the people that took that survey that are in town do not qualify for the affordable housing. But many more of them would qualify for the workforce housing, which is between the 80% area median income and 120%. So we think that is something that the planning board, should have that discretion to have some fair trade and negotiation. If you're providing a need for the community, You know, we see it as every time a waiver might be granted, Westford is getting something, is winning something, or getting a public amenity, or a kind of housing that might not be, you wouldn't end up with otherwise, you know, for having this leverage and flexibility. So we were trying to look at ways to also improve the tax base going forward. So we did a little analysis of some of the existing multifamily housing projects in town. It's not a guarantee, but if you look at the most recent trends, the Bell Apartments, which you folks are very familiar with, it did not translate into the number of school-age children that they thought it would be. We have some of the math there summarized in some of these tables. So for instance, Joe, if you can just, let's see, Bell Westford, the two Bell Westfords, there was only, what, like
99 students.
99 students and over
420 apartments.
Right. So you get, what is it, roughly 1 out of every 4
Yeah.
dwelling units, you end up with 1 school-age child. The other thing is that a lot of the multifamily developments, they're far more efficient in terms of providing services. You know, a lot of them also even maintain some of their own improvements, such as their driveways, snow removal, trash, recycling pickup. It's far more energy efficient, uses far less water per dwelling unit. So there are some advantages, and there's also the secondary benefits of, say, meals tax, which is difficult to pin to, you know, this kind of development. But you also have the excise taxes. That's where a significant chunk of our local tax money comes from, besides property. So you can see some trends that are in this table that, you know, and it's not surprising. Home ownership dwelling units tend to have more school-age children, say, and greater drain on, say, some of the resources in town, as opposed to rental. Single-family detached dwellings probably have, you know, the most per dwelling unit need for services. Versus multifamily. And then when you go, different styles of multifamily tend to have different burdens associated with them. And so by and large, the large multifamily that's for rent tends to be sort of the winner in terms of the least overall impact and the least amount of school-age children. And when you factor in some of those secondary benefits, such as the excise tax and the meals tax, et cetera, you actually can end up with a tax advantage if you look at, you know, that could be helping the status quo. So the last thing we want to do is to have new growth. Everyone says we need new growth. Well, we do need new growth. But if all you do is end up with more of the kind of burden that you currently have, you don't shift the needle a little, then you're just really making the problem bigger. But it's not a guarantee, but when you look at the recent multifamily developments in town, it seems like it can actually be an improvement. So without the anticipated, say, burden on the school system. But it's not a guarantee. It's important that we don't over extrapolate into, you know, a handful, like a dozen or so different properties. But that appears to be the trend. And so we also have, in some of the explainers, we had our regional planning agency put together some of the other benefits that can be tied to multifamily housing. So we have that. I think that was sent to you folks earlier to see if that, you know, it's not as simple, it's not cut and dry, and it's not as simple as looking at the taxes that come in from a particular dwelling unit. There's a bigger picture, and part of it is also giving opportunities for some of those existing properties. As Joe mentioned, when those leases come up, we have a significant amount of commercial office space that we still are not out of some of those leases that were entered into prior to COVID and before we had this hybrid and remote work option. So we don't yet know the true long-term effect of that. What we have heard when reaching out to some of the larger property owners is the trend is definite, in that if people are re-upping their lease, most of them are looking to downsize their square footage, and some are choosing to relocate closer to where their employers might be currently. So that is a trend. Something like this could give an opportunity for, say, Tech Park East to provide some multifamily and also provide some amenities. And that could be a better overall tax base and give them better opportunities to adapt over time. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is some people say we don't care if the offices are vacant. you know, we still get to collect our taxes. And the reality is, for commercial properties, it's not looked at the same way as residential properties. So part of the valuation is based on the property, but it's also based on, say, the rental income. So if you have long-term vacancies in those office spaces, or if they're not able to get a good rate because, you know, the glut of office space, over time, that will cause a devaluation of that property and or less appreciation over time. We already know that the residential properties have appreciated far, far more than the non-residential properties, okay? Which that automatically shifts more of the tax burden onto the residents, right? But if the commercial property either goes down or doesn't go up as much, that makes that situation even worse. So it can be a little selfishly good if you try to do what you can to help those properties stay as viable as property, because that means that less of that burden may be shifting to the residents. So it's just something to think about. Nothing is simple. We also look for opportunities to put foot traffic near some existing businesses. We look for those walkable opportunities, and we also look for some properties that might be considered currently underdeveloped, where current zoning, it's not quite economically viable to redevelop them right now. So there's a lot of things that went into this. Commend the MICMAC. They put in a lot of good work on this.
Yeah, I mean, the example you give at Tech Park East, like up on the screen, we happen to have a photo there. This is an aerial from the middle of summer 2023. And you can get the idea the remote hybrid schedule is taking over and the amount of vacant space you're getting from these parking lots where there's just nobody there anymore. So why not provide an opportunity for the Gutierrez company who's interested in trying to have more people in this area, provide a place for companies that are looking to potentially locate here, have a space for their employees who want to be closer to work, to have, you know, space available to them, create some amenity space, create some residential component, to provide some housing options that would make it attractive for employees and employers to come over to this area. So that's, I think, kind of overall the way the MICMAC tried to envision it, was create opportunities, add another tool to the toolbox, if you will, for some of these properties in the 110 Powers Road area. Try to keep it a positive thing versus taking away any kind of rights that property owners would otherwise have, still under current zoning. We want to keep it positive. We don't want to be in the shoes of some folks that have chosen to not comply with the mandate, like Milton. I don't know if you've heard of anything that's been going on there, but they, through a special election, overturned their town meeting vote to vote for compliance. The state, in reaction, as we learned just today, has since rescinded a $140,000 grant that was provided to the town for seawall improvements, and declared that they would not be eligible to apply for certain grants, and that they would be at a competitive disadvantage for other grants. So basically hinting that there are going to be a variety of programs that they're not going to be eligible to get any monies from, and they've already taken money away.
But we're keeping it positive.
But we're trying to keep it positive. And get it that some people,
For the town meeting, huh?
yeah, get it that some people don't like mandates or, you know, having more rules put on them, but
I think that's true. I agree with that.
tried to, you know, make it in a way, why don't we try to accomplish some goals of the town through the mandate, so.
With a mere simple majority vote instead of the usual 2/3 majority vote
Simple majority votes required at town meeting?
for
this
bylaw, yes.
Yep.
Are these all rentals, or there's gonna be some condos, or?
We can't require one way or the other.
Can't require any balance, it could be either or?
It can be whatever the applicant chooses. We have reached out to, we've been in conversations with some folks, because there's been prospective developers that have been following this since we submitted the first action plan. And some of them are willing. They looked at the results of some of our surveys, and they are willing to consider providing components that line up with what, you know, the surveyors responded to see what kinds of things they'd like to see. We can't require that, but by having those waivers and or some of the special permits, they think it's still financially viable to provide a component that lines up with what folks have said they see as a need for the community, that we can't require. but they would be open to it because there's a path forward for that, that it can still be financially viable.
So what are our options within these areas, or the towns, to say yes, no, maybe to developers?
So if it's in this district area, if someone filed an application, it would have to be approved. If they wanted to do something, so a lot of the approvals is as of right. The town can't really say no. They can put reasonable conditions on it to like mitigate for traffic, stormwater, the usual stuff. Think of site plan, right?
Right.
But if we want to, say they want to have reduced setbacks, we call out in the purpose section, I don't know if you can go to that, Joe. We have a lot of things in the purpose section that say, these are some things that would be good for the town, and these priorities are gonna change over time. If you say they, in order to be financially viable, like say they wanted to add an age-restricted portion, and it was of a lower density than they could otherwise do, that has cost implications. So one of the ways they could make up for that is to say, hey, you've got this 75-foot front yard setback here, can we do a 35? They could say, well, if you're providing some of these desired goals in the purpose section, planning board can have some discretion to reduce or waive some of those requirements. Or say they provide workforce housing, that could be something that's viewed as good. Or say they're gonna do some off-site improvements to like provide trails or connectivity, or that tie into, say, commercial rec. Something that would be good for the town, or that the planning board at least feels is desirable for the community, things that we normally couldn't require. You can do trade-offs like that. So I don't know.
So planning board would have oversight?
Planning board would be the permit granting authority, yes.
So, for example, like Technology East, is a thought to use the existing parking to maybe put residential units, like a workforce type situation, so, but you would have to eliminate some of the commercial property, or is it, you know what I mean, like
Or
what
both.
is the?
So for Tech Park
down.
East, and they're still in the early stages, but they've been thinking conceptually. I think their thoughts there for at least the Tech Park East, they would take sort of that middle parcel, right, Joe, where there is
Yeah. 3 parcels here, yeah.
3 parcels. So the middle parcel would potentially become a multifamily housing component. And the existing building, it might not lend itself to redevelopment, building code today, anyhow. Multifamily might be there, but under this bylaw, they could put some amenities like a restaurant at the front parcel, or say in the bottom floor of the building that's along Littleton Road. That's something that could be permissible under this current proposal. So where they have the visibility along Littleton Road, you could have that amenity. So now you've got a place or space for people to go to. You could have some housing there, and I'm sure they would actually favor workforce housing and try to get high-tech employees there where they could, it's kind of its own little area there. You could, have quite the trail system there. There are people walking all times of the year there. So I think that would be good for them long-term to, over time. And, they've got a lot of complications there because they own a number of parcels. They've got to juggle leases when they're up, tenants, tenant preferences, shifting square footage needs. So it's not a simple thing where they can just say, oh yeah, we can do this now. It's actually quite involved. But this would at least allow them to begin planning that possibility.
Even in their short and long-term vision for the property, still to be a commercial campus. It's just to have this housing component to make it more attractive.
Would there be an affordability requirement?
So right now, there is a 10% affordability requirement for projects involving 10 or more dwelling units.
Okay.
So the 10% kicks in with 10 or more units, but the board could potentially waive or reduce that in exchange for things that check the boxes of the goals in the purpose section. So they could say, look, workforce housing, that's not as demanding as the affordable housing in terms of the math. Maybe they could do more workforce housing units instead of the affordable, or maybe there can be some.
What's the workforce related to affordable? What's the
So
on that?
affordable housing is considered 80% of the area median income or less.
Yeah.
And above 80, but up to no more than 120% is the workforce housing. somewhere in there we've got some math. I don't know if we generally, we can give you.
That's pretty much market rate then.
Well, we can get you that, so the other part is only so a certain percentage of your total gross income can be required for your housing needs. If it's above a certain percentage, is it about 30%, thereabouts, you're considered burdened, house burdened. So, and the values change every year on what the area median income is. So Westford is one of a number of communities in the greater Lowell bucket, and that math gets updated. Thank you, Joe. So if you look at this chart, if you just look at the one person on the left,
Yep.
so the area median income right now, the 100%, that one person could earn, would be $82,875. So 80% affordable would be $66,300. Workforce goes up to $99,450. So between the 66,300 and the 99,450. And so we look at the people that responded to our surveys, we did ask high level some income. Not everyone shared, which we totally get and respect, but we knew right off the bat that most of the people who took the survey, they wouldn't qualify for the affordable. But many more would qualify for the workforce.
80 to 120 range as opposed to less than 80.
It's funny because I bet the workforce area, like in that tech area, could be high, you know what I mean?
It could be.
Right.
Yep, but at least it could serve, like, it could potentially help more people in our community now to actually qualify for this type of housing. Because the sad part is a lot of our folks would not qualify. At least the ones that took the survey.
Under the workforce housing, do you literally have to work, or is that
I think it's more income.
more income based? Okay.
Right or wrong, the term, I think that was people who have a job, are working, and, you know, they have, so it's that's just one example, but you never know what could come up on a particular site. A particular site, there might be some one-time opportunities for that site where they have a unique ability to provide maybe connection in a very long, a linear project that you can't require, but it might be a great opportunity for the town if there's like an extensive trail system proposed and they've got that one piece that you need. That could be something, you know, that you can't require, but they could, for consideration, honest trade-offs, think about that.
Subdivide off a section of property for some senior housing could be another example.
Which would also be probably tax favorable. So,
Impact on fire, police, highway, that sort of thing. I mean, I know that, you know, the school student population is one delta, but, you know, I mean, it's kind of almost sounding now like there's been some upscale in some of those needs for the police and fire with some of the units that have been built over the past, 10 years maybe, or more, from Princeton right on out.
So we did also take a look, as we looked at the 10 or 12 different housing developments, we did include a couple of conventional subdivisions, kind of just to have for examination, you know, a baseline. We looked at some newer residential subdivisions, and of course they had more school-age children than the long-term established subdivisions where people are in various stages. But when we looked at the more recent multifamily housing, which you folks permitted most of them, actually, even though there are a lot of calls to those locations, when you look at the number of calls per dwelling unit, it's not out of whack with that. There are some outliers, though, and that could be, so, you know, without, there's a particular.
These are the same properties that we looked at for schools. We just said we just tried to pick some different examples, so it's pretty random.
Okay.
No survey, no random samples perfect. But, you know, by and large, they're fairly consistent with a couple outliers being A-Stack Estates there.
314 calls. So,
Brookside Mill was another one.
10 Broad Road. Haystack.
but that could be, you know, one or two units where maybe they are frequent, you know, callers, so that skews that, but
That seems like an outlier.
yeah, that
So,
seems
yeah.
like an outlier.
So when you pulled those outliers out, and then you kind of look at across the board, they're all, you know, fairly consistent. between apartments, you know, for rent or.
Right,
Do we
Brookside
get this
Mill.
from the actual call logs?
What the hell?
Yes.
Which one? Brookside Mill? Is that 143 calls?
Yep.
Yeah.
35.
Was this
Careful.
police
Let's
calls
see.
or fire calls or total responses? Because I know like down there, they, for a long time, they had a problem with with the fire alarm system. So would that
So I think
generate
it
a
was,
number?
I think it was all calls.
So that could boost that number up.
Yeah, so if you have false alarms, right, you're gonna get
Right.
dinged for one, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's not a true emergency call,
Right.
but it is, but.
Still,
Yeah, somebody has to
Require
respond.
services to go
Fair.
to the property
Correct.
Yeah,
and take away from services elsewhere if needed.
yeah, that's true.
yes.
But that's, I think that's some significant numbers there that might jump up.
Yeah.
With some additional units. I mean, Princeton's pretty active too. But anyway, that's, I guess, neither here nor there, but there's
Princeton's
certainly some
point,
impact
yeah.
through this, some,
I mean, Princeton's 0.61 per unit versus, you know, some of our single families. Examples here, 0.72, 0.6, 0.38. So I mean, they're all fairly consistent on a per unit basis anyway.
But there are those outliers.
yeah.
Yeah, the outliers, which,
But yeah, if you compare them versus the single family, you know, the conventional subdivisions, it's not out of whack. Should say it's seemingly consistent.
That's
But
interesting.
from the responders, they're like, you know, the math might say it's in line for the number of calls per dwelling unit, but in their minds, they're probably thinking, this is the whatever trip this month to this location, even though it might still average out to the same number per dwelling unit, they're going to that same place because there's more units in that one location, if that makes
Right.
sense.
It's, yeah,
But then if we're gonna add more of those type facilities along 110, we're gonna double those calls.
So, nothing is simple.
No.
But on the other
I get
hand,
it.
they could provide a positive change of new growth in terms of money in versus burden. So it's not simple.
No, not at all. But like Jim said, it's the fire and police services that would be impacted probably the most. I mean, highway's not gonna go into private properties and plow and fix roads, so police and fire have to respond to a call no matter what.
That's right.
So what's the total number that would be, is there a number, Joe, on this? You mentioned something about 5,000.
so the unit
Would this- would you-
capacity,
this- would
yeah.
thi- Like this map would be configured to allow that, a certain number, would that be?
So the
I mean,
unit-
I know the 924 is the
Is the
target.
capacity
minimum
we're
required.
Minimum required number,
Yeah.
but, you know, what's the
The map
what's the
that you have
target
before
number?
you is about 5,000.
5,000.
Units.
Is what the unit capacity is, that's the number that's given from the compliance model. Again, what's realistic, it's gonna be far less than that.
So we believe that if you factor in more reality and that, you know, you couldn't get more than, say, 50 to 70% of that as built out. So if you look at the Bell Apartments, those are some of the densest developments. Those are just about 10 units per acre, not 15 units per acre. And so, and they also, if you factor in some of the sites, you gotta look at the soils, the on-site soils in terms of drainage and septic. And of course, you do have those generous setbacks to Littleton Concord Powers Road. So that's why we don't think it's, in order to get that,
Plus, it's quite possible you're gonna have mixed-use projects where there's gonna
Right.
be the amenity space versus just strictly residential.
so that unit capacity, even if we factor in the 50 to 70% of the, say, 5,000, that also assumes that the highest level density development can happen and that every single parcel gets built as the apartment buildings and has no non-residential component, which is,
That's a developer's choice.
that is
What's most
correct.
economic to a developer may be a big apartment building.
It may be.
So that could certainly, I mean, that 5,000 could turn into a scary number of 70%. If everybody, these developers are all jumping into this
That
pot
was
now.
my concern when I
They're
said
like-
who's gonna
they're like
oversee this.
piranhas getting onto this. Westford's a very attractive community. There's 177 towns that are looking at this. Westford might be one that's pretty, that you might see developers, I mean, I could foresee that 924 number tripling before we even realized it was out there. I think that, selling that at town meeting is, I mean, I don't know if that's gonna pop up, but I think.
I expect
think
it
this is
will.
I mean, I don't know that, there's a lot of acreage here. I mean, that could certainly, this could have been configured differently to keep that number in constraint, but it hasn't, so now it's out there.
It is out there.
5,000 is a big number,
It
and
was
70%
closer to
of
10.
5,000 is 3,000 units,
Yeah.
and they're gonna jump on that. It's gonna be a very attractive opportunity for a lot of developers from anywhere, out of state, massive conglomerates are gonna try to get, multiple towns going in some of these developments, possibly, I would think. You're not gonna see Joe with the pickup truck putting an apartment building up. I think you're gonna see, well, like Princeton was, years ago, that was approved and then sold instantly.
Oh.
So that sort of big guy can come along and say, oh, this looks hot. So does, Lexington and Acton and, whatever else. So we're gonna stay in this little niche here, and
I do.
think there could be a substantial, I think, maybe I'm wrong, there could be a substantial burst over the next 5 years that would really, could constrain
Is
some
there a-
services, some, whatever.
Is there a sense that the other communities have similar size districts or do we not have that sense, I guess? Is that?
They'll have a number. They have a number.
They all have their own number.
Yeah.
I think Brookline was exactly, targeted their exact number.
Arlington was about 1,000 over their required number.
Was
Arlington,
yeah, they did, yeah.
they went about 1,000 over.
Because you would think that the towns that are closer to the MBTA, right, and closer to Boston would probably be more desirable for developers before Westford, I would think, maybe, but I don't know, that's just, who knows, right? I mean,
And we're an adjacent community. I don't know that we have a lot of
yeah, do we have,
opportunity. Huh?
do we have a lot of people that use the rail from, do we have a sense of that, I guess?
This is what, just a bus? Other than that, you gotta go to Littleton for the train and Acton for the train.
Or Concord, yeah. Concord
I don't think that bus doesn't connect you.
I mean, our only connection is the MBTA bus, right?
Well, we're,
But we're
we're
also-
next to the,
Yeah.
we're next to Littleton and Acton, which
Yeah,
have
we are
trains,
next
right,
to it, but I mean,
right.
you have to, you have to have a car to get there. You're not gonna walk to the train station. In Arlington,
Plus a
and
parking
some of
lot.
those
Right,
places.
The law is
They're gonna-
adjacent to a town.
Adjacent to. So some of these communities have a better proximity to transportation, to public transportation, than we do. And if you live in Westford, you're gonna drive your car to a train station.
That's paid in.
Well, you drive to work. You don't walk to anything in this town unless you're in, there's some suggestion that the employees might be working right, on site, but I think that's a misnomer too. honestly.
Came before us, right, but that was the whole, they were talking about that
The bus that drove in front of it.
people from Boston would be renting those, right?
Yeah.
Not,
They would, but I mean, that, I think the whole,
but that was before the pandemic. right?
yeah, the economy changes. I mean,
Yeah.
people might work there for 3 years and they move off to someplace else, or they're working remotely, or I don't think people, 100 years ago, people worked in the Abbott Mill till they died. They were there for 50 years and they walked to work. We're trying to recreate that, they walk to work again. I mean, I lived in Forge Village, there were like, all these guys were walking down in the morning, and the third shift was walking back. They all, nobody have a car, they all walked. Well, that's what we're trying to create in a
So, Jeff,
jackass way.
if this was worst case scenario on Jim's point, what would happen to the infrastructure of Littleton Road? I mean, we all agree it's a mess now. You introduce another 2,000 units somewhere on that corridor. Who steps
Already
up
the
and,
planned widening.
who
from-
steps up and takes care of that?
There's already the planned widening from the Regency over up to the Triangle.
To Powers Road, and we've already suggested,
How many traffic lights?
I don't know that there would be additional, but there would certainly be adjustments with the existing ones. I guess the thing that I'll say is I do think some market realities would come into play if there was too much all at once. We've heard, even in the past, even for the Bell apartments, because remember, they did not start as the same entity. There was a lot of concern about having multiple concurrent projects, and things are very tricky these days. We keep hearing between construction costs, financing requirements, that I suspect that if there were many concurrent projects, that would create a problem for some of those folks. I also think that when you do get, you know, more residential units, that will create higher demand for those amenities. The other thing I'll say is that something truly unexpected happens. I mean, we do have potentially 3 short-term projects. 2 are public, 1 is not. And we have a couple that are considering midterm, 5 to 10 years or so. But again, there's a lot of things that are in flux there. Those are just the folks that have come in and spoken to us. There could be others that, like you said, if this happens, you know, they might not have mentioned anything to us yet. They might come in. But the other thing I'll say, if something truly unexpected happens and you get way more than you think possible, nothing would prevent us from coming in and amending the zoning district in the future, okay? As long as we don't create a non-compliant situation. The reason these areas were selected is because the committee, who shared a lot of your concerns, is that it does create a lot of opportunity for Westford, for, you know, dealing with these vacant commercial spaces, which may only get worse. It's creating some redevelopment, positive redevelopment opportunities, and we do need more housing. We do need more housing. We are not giving fair opportunities, we think, to our folks to try to age in place and stay in town. We're not giving smaller, more modest housing opportunities where people can maybe have more affordable tax burdens associated with that. And there are opportunities for walkability and creating more demand. I mean, we already know the commercial recreation, something like this could be very beneficial to that whole area and really reinvigorating the commercial recreation there. So all these made it in for one reason or another. And I guess right now, more area equals more opportunity, but nothing prevents town meeting from taking a look if something unexpected happens. Because the reality is, with all these parcels, the chance that every single parcel would come in, you know, during the same permitting cycle and apply for a multifamily housing project, that's just, it's unthinkable.
No, nothing's in.
So,
No, I agree.
if you get hit with a lot of projects, nothing prevents you from taking a harder look and seeing if it needs refining and maybe removing some properties for the here and now. Conversely,
Some of these properties could be removed off this plot.
I mean, say we adopt this,
Adopt this exact configuration.
town meeting could come in at a later town meeting, I believe, and remove portions, but you can't render the district non-compliant. So there's a couple of,
wrinkles within the mandate that you need to have for your district. For instance, at least 50% of the district area needs to be contiguous, meaning all the parcels need to touch each other.
Okay.
So you couldn't, you know, just come in, like say, for instance, you look at the map now, you decide we're just gonna take out, you know, like this chunk over here, and then all of a sudden, the area that's left down here doesn't equal these little chunks here and there, or at least 50% of the total area. So you have to kind of massage the district area a little bit, in terms of creating that continuity throughout the district.
but it is doable. So, we also know that the swim and tennis club property, we know those soils are not favorable. Hanover Company looked at it and passed because the soils did not lend themselves to on-site sewage treatment plant. We also know that if you look at the triangle, Powers, Concord, Littleton, there are some existing amenities there that would probably thrive if there was some multifamily component there someday. You know, the Big Apple Deli, you know, with the Dunkin' Donuts, and you have some, and childcare. Those are logical amenities that could service a multifamily component. And Gutierrez already admitted, for their third parcel, they don't have any intention, as of right now, of the one that's near Littleton Road to put multifamily housing there. It doesn't make sense. To them, it makes sense to have that front and center, either retail or restaurant in particular there, that would make sense to them. So even though that parcel would be in, you know, there's,
It's really just to open up that amenity space and be a draw for bringing people into
Yeah.
the park.
so there is opportunity here, but there's also room to adjust in the future as long as we don't create a non-compliant situation.
In some ways, we were lucky to have the open conversations that we did have with property owners, so we could find out what's a short-term issue for them, what's a long-term issue for them, or let's just, I don't really have any plans, I would just like to have it as another tool in the toolbox, you know, option down the road.
And others have said, we've got a lease that runs another 10 years. We don't know what we want to do then, but, you know, this might be something we would look at then.
So it's just available for.
Yep.
for the
Yeah,
long term.
that's the challenge Gutierrez has over there, I'm sure, right? There's all different leases and.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the McMac has tried to balance that, having, you know, this could be a short-term need to address right now for the town, but then there's these other ones that, you know, could be a long-term thing. Not have all those impacts all at once.
Well, that's why I've asked several times, who's in control of this, so to speak? Because like you used the term by rights.
That's right.
So if these property owners by rights can do, whether it costs them more or not, but they can still do 15 units per acre, we kind of wash our hands of control and they can,
They could come in and apply for that, and if they can somehow fit 15 units per acre, then they can do that. As unrealistic as it seems, given the septic and other constraints, but they could do that.
but yeah, but again, we're kind of relinquishing somewhat control of, like you said, it would take a year to go to the next town meeting to pull it back, but if people have already started here, and they broke up our map already, for us to have continuous, we just lost all control, so to speak.
I think it would be,
Worst case scenario.
worst case scenario,
Is
if
what I'm
someone,
saying,
if
but-
someone applies under a bylaw that allows it, then they likely get to just follow through. And any adjustments made would have to be given that thought as well as maintaining compliance, the mathematical compliance.
No, I mean, I agree with the parcels, it's just, the by rights thing makes me a little nervous.
Well, that's the law.
Is
I
this
get
a
it,
part
I
of
get
the
it.
statute?
What's that?
That's part of the
Right as
sta-
part of the statute?
Yeah.
This is typical, I mean, some of the, there's always pushback, I think, maybe less so now, when these state mandates come down and it puts the heavy hammer on these, in the communities. You know, there's always, I mean, way back to, you know, Proposition 2.5, the fights over that, and sped, I mean, it just, you know, and I think in 2021, I think there's a lot of sleepy time over it, people weren't realizing this would be the long range. You know, that thing was passed and it didn't get a lot of fanfare. It was out there, but it wasn't, I think now like Milton and Brookline and Newton, you're reading more about how people are reacting to it. Most, I don't think they were aware of it a year ago. A lot of people weren't aware of it a year ago. So it's just kind of evolving, you know. And then, I mean, were there 177 towns? So there's, you know, the other balance minus 351 are, they're not impacted by it. So I think there's probably a little bit of, I wouldn't call it resentment, but I think a little bit of, thank God it's not us. You know, Pepperell's one of the towns that, in that map, if you look at it, Pepperell and Dunstable, I think, are the two towns that are not in the program. And then Ashby is, because it borders, I mean,
Yeah, how do you get to the
you know,
MBTA from there, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ashby borders Fitchburg. Fitchburg has the rail service, but I mean, Ashby's like a cow town. And they're in it.
Not for
And
long.
Pepperell's out of it. I mean, you know, it doesn't, you know, you figure, I mean, people in Northampton are probably going, hey, look at those people over on the right side of the state. Look at us. We're free. Look what they have to put up with. And I think it's just a burden on the communities. I mean, for guys like you having to go through this, it's an onerous task.
But
go
there's
through this
also
and
positive
manage this.
opportunity for the town.
Yeah, it is, but
But you're right, we
it's a tough
can't
piece of
guarantee
legislation.
what will come down the pike.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of work for the staff and to you go through all this.
I mean, I'm all for it as long as it's controlled. Like Jim said, who knows what's lurking in the weeds right now?
Yeah,
We don't know.
we'll find out.
Yeah, we don't know,
That's
we
why
don't
we
know what the market's
set
gonna
up the
want in the long
bylaw
term.
as we did.
People
You
may
get,
want
you
single
get
family.
developers from Texas and California, they're gonna converge and say, hey, this huge thing of
It's possible, it's
Massachusetts.
possible, but.
That's where
How's-
Hanover's from.
How does is Bell fully occupied, or they had any?
They They,
Water
to my
temperature?
knowledge, they're essentially fully
They,
occupied and have
they
been.
did occupy, yeah, over a
But
period of.
I will
couple of
say,
years.
that's one of the reasons we do have 45 pages is, you know, there was a lot of thought put in by the MICMAC, the planning board, to not make, to create the opportunities to try, even though we can't require, to make it palatable to them to want to do some of the things that serve the purpose and goals that they would need planning board's discretion to say yes to, but that it would be worthwhile for them selfishly, for them to want to do that, if that makes sense, where we can't require. And like Joe said, there was a couple of things. One of the reasons it's so long is because they wanted people, they thought it made sense, even though it lengthened the bylaw, to put everything in here. Because a lot of people don't like, you know, pursuant to concurrent regulations for, say, design standards, say. They want to know what you could get out of this and not, you know, a separate process that says it could look like this. Do you know what I mean? They want to see what it is. But there's plenty of opportunity to waive or reduce those things in here.
Yeah, I fell off, I'm sorry.
Oh, you just missed a lot of important stuff.
I'm sure I did.
So what's this?
Yeah, so what do we need to,
Well, we're wondering if the zoning board is inclined to take a position on whether or not to recommend this proposal to town meeting or not.
Thus far, we have had a few committees that have recommended approval. MICMAC, the Westford Housing Authority, a couple others, right? The Economic Development Committee.
Yep.
Do we need to take a vote on it?
You don't need to,
Well,
but
I mean,
if
should we
you're
take-
not opposed,
Oh, should we, on the record, take a vote for it?
that would be ideal if you're so inclined. Because then that info could be added to the motions document for town meeting.
All right, so I think I would make a motion that we approve.
Recommend approval to
Recommend
town
approval
meeting.
to town meeting.
Recommend approval for, yeah, approve this, to be presented at the town meeting.
approve the proposal?
The plan, the whole
yeah.
comprehensive plan.
Do we have a second?
Do we want to say approve or not oppose?
We want to approve it so it's presented at the town meeting. Isn't that the motion, or is it,
Well, I think he's,
what am I missing?
I think Scott is suggesting he might be neither for nor against, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not opposed to it.
We're not opposed to it, but we're not officially 100% approving it either.
Well, I think you should discuss that.
Well, how do we, I mean, it's either, in my opinion, it's black or it's white. Either we oppose
Town
it or we
meeting-
support it.
town
I mean,
meeting
I
has to
don't know how
approve
you
it or not
half-ass
approve
something like this, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been it's a comprehensive plan, it's been developed, I think, extraordinarily, with a lot of work and development.
Oh, without question.
And this is, you know, this is confined to a certain section of town. I'm a little bit, I mean, my angst would be that big 5,000 number, I'd rather have a smaller little blue space, but it is what it is. I think, as Jeff said, this is gonna be a long-range plan, it's not gonna pop in the next 12 months. I think there's been a lot of committee work on it from various committees. I don't know why, I don't know, I certainly don't feel like I could oppose it, so I support it. I don't know how we middle it.
Yeah,
What are you saying, Scott? We just
you wouldn't,
go neutral on it?
are you saying you support it then, Scott, or you don't?
I support it, but to Jim's point, I also, that's a lot of space.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And in
it
a
is.
perfect storm,
Yeah,
it could go the opposite way than what we're thinking.
it is.
That's all.
Oh,
So, am I supporting it? Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Scott and Jim as well.
You know, I'm not opposing it, and a lot of work and a lot of great things have come out of it, and the upside is there. But there's also a small downside that could happen, so,
but I think our one of the things we could help with is to put the thing over the rail in town meeting, get it, you know, it's another move that would help the whole process if our board approved it. I don't know, the planning board has to do likewise, take a vote, or have they, or
They're obligated to provide their,
their input.
right, they would do that at the close of the public
Close
hearing.
meeting, so. I mean, even though there might be some issues we think about and we discussed,
Well, what's
I
the
think the
difference in
bottom line
language if we say we support it?
We,
Is it,
we support.
opposed to approve it?
It's, right now, it would be, does this board recommend approval by town meeting?
Yes.
That's it.
That's it, recommend it to be approved by, recommend for approval at town meeting.
Yes, that's the question. If-
That's the question.
Yeah. So
Otherwise, you're recommending that they don't approve it, and then we'd have to go back to a different town meeing if they don't approve this version.
Well, that's a
This
whole different
version.
ball of wax. If
Right,
the town
that's-
meeting
yeah,
doesn't
let's-
approve it, then
Right.
that's another, I don't think that's gonna.
It's not that I
I'd honestly be
disapprove
surprised if town
the
meeting didn't
concept.
approve it, but
It's just, you know, the ramifications of the infrastructure. I mean, that's what my concern is. The projects themselves and all the work that's been done, I have no problems and no issues with. Just an ancillary thing, you know.
I
What's
think
gonna
we deal
happen?
with that, we'll have to deal with that down the road a couple of years.
So I wish, I wish
You know, it's
they
not
could
gonna
say,
happen
oh yeah,
at the
if
town meeting.
it happens, this is the route that we can go.
Yeah.
No, I don't say the town has to come up with that, but
I mean, as Jeff said, there's some properties here that probably, like you mentioned, the swim and tennis, I mean, that probably, wouldn't have been part of this had they been able to move that property in another fashion by another developer. You know, it
Right.
might not have been on that map, still might not work. but-
Still might not work, right?
Still may not work, so that could be a piece that's diminishing the blue stripes we're looking at here. And then some other parcels may, you know, I'm not sure about that, and some of the numbers they were throwing around from the Sherwood ski area, that seemed like a big, I mean, at one meeting they were saying they wanted 600 units there.
Over 2 phases, yes.
Over 2 phases, that's a lot, and again, I thought that, you know, the location there on the traffic and also as a ski area, traffic on 110's one thing, but on Powers Road, that could be, I think, a significant issue. But again, I see it as a significant issue, but then I think it's something that's gonna be addressed down the road. We pass it, and then, I mean, I certainly would hope that, in my opinion, that
Yeah, but if we put
the 600 units there.
But again, and I hate to beat the dead horse, by rights, if somebody bought Neshoba, they can put 600 units without you have a say in anything.
You're right.
That is absolutely correct. However, traffic, stormwater, those are all things that the planning board can review as part of that process, and they have to
Control
to mitigate the impacts from
it.
it.
Right.
And the town is not obligated to, like, if, say, there isn't, this is a bad example, because most of those areas were based on where we do have, say, existing water infrastructure to provide things, but say there wasn't adequate municipal water at a site. It's not our problem. That's the applicant's problem.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
It would be on them to
On them.
provide the infrastructure.
So what you're saying is if an applicant comes before the planning board and they deem traffic or something not good, they can then request this project to be brought within constraints.
So they could, with benefit of proper peer review services, they could either require, they could condition the project to address those concerns. And that could be either mitigating off-site to make the traffic work, or changing the scale of the project somehow. If they can't mitigate off-site, then they may have to revise things on-site to reduce on-site. But the most common thing I'd say traffic-wise is to deal with that off-site. But that is one of the things that the board, through like typical site plan review, can consider.
Yeah.
Control it.
My only sense is, I guess, similar to what Jim was saying, there was a lot of work that was put in this. It's something we have to do, my understanding is present that anyway, right? So we have to get something before town meeting and get something approved for the state, right? So.
Yes.
I know, you're right, it opens up potentially Pandora's box, but at least it's something we can start with, and then, to Jeff's point, we potentially can change it down the road. You're right, but I agree with you, you know, in the Neshoba, you're right, you could open up that for a lot of traffic,
Sale, yeah.
right?
We don't wanna be, you know, I think we certainly don't wanna be a Milton or a Littleton or who else? Brookline, I guess, well, I guess the Brookline.
Littleton is, their deadline is the end of this year.
And-
Wait, yeah, end of this year.
Yeah, but their town meeting failed too, right?
Their initial, yes.
Initial, yeah.
So they still have time before the end of this calendar year.
Right.
Whereas Milton passed their
I
deadline.
just think it's beneficial for us to support this and get it through town meeting. And then we'll play the, I mean, that's about the second inning of the game, and we got 7 innings to go before this is brought to fruition. I think it's, I think it's,
There's no requirement that anything gets built, although we suspect there will be a couple that would love to utilize the bylaw in the short term.
I mean, the whole economy is a big factor in all of it. I mean, the presidential election right on out.
So would the board like to vote to recommend approving it, or would you?
Approval for, was it for approval for town, approval to go before the town meeting?
Recommend
town meeting
approval.
Rather
approve
not.
the proposed bylaw.
Recommend approval.
Recommend it for town meeting?
Yeah.
Recommend, well, what's the? word?
Recommend the zoning proposal to town meeting.
Yes. Recommend it to be approved.
Yep.
Recommend that we would support approval at the town meeting of this plan. That's the way I would.
Yeah, it would come across the town meeting that the zoning board recommends the town approve this zoning
Yes,
bylaw
at the town meeting.
as stated, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But, you know, I get a sense that Scott doesn't want it, right, and maybe Dan doesn't. I think Jeff, maybe, how do you feel, Jeff?
I'm pretty indifferent about it. I think, like Scott, Jim said, rather, that 5,000 number is really scary to me. I honestly don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you.
And the board is not obligated to take a
That's
position.
what I'm saying, we don't, right, so I'm getting a sense that we would not get enough majority of the board to approve that.
Take a straw vote.
I mean, do we
Without
meet
a
again
formal,
before
motion,
town meeting?
No, this is just, if there was a vote, it would get added to the
Beyond
motions
record. See,
packet.
I'm just, that's what I'm
Listen.
trying to say is,
Say that again, Jeff, it'd be added to.
So, in the motions document where it says, this is the article,
Oh,
this is the quantum of vote needed, here are the board, here's the sponsor of, which would be the planning board. Then they list, like, the select board
Selectmen.
took a position to either recommend or not.
okay.
You know, FinCom, recommend or not,
committees,
yeah, whatever. That's where this,
Various boards would.
that's where this would pop up. And that would be it.
Recorded and printed
Yes,
for the warrant. On the warrant,
on the motions document.
motions document, okay. Okay.
I mean,
Well-
honestly, I'm kind of with Jeff where I'm not, I want to take nothing away from what the work that's been done on this by anybody. The 5,000 number is a little more than I was anticipating.
Yeah. Probably not a real workable number, but we don't know, I mean, certainly 1,000's the minimum we have to do, basically.
Exactly.
So, somewhere between 1,000 and it's not gonna be 5,000, so, you know, throw the dot at the dartboard to get the ultimate number in another decade, probably, but, we're at 1,000 anyway. So,
Like that 600 number for ski area, that's 15 of those buildings from Bell Westford, or the ones next door. There's only 40 units per.
well, that was a number that they threw out,
Yeah.
suggested, but I mean, I don't know what they could do there, how many they would actually be able to get through,
Well, they have, what, 40 acres?
something like that.
40
District.
What was the language you said to begin with? It's not that we come out and we support it, but we don't not support it?
I forget, to be honest with you.
He suggested not oppose, but if that's your direction, then I would just recommend not take a
Taking
position.
not taking a vote. Yeah, if it doesn't sound like we're gonna as a board, then it's why it doesn't seem to make sense to take the vote. I mean, for the straw vote I'm getting, it's not gonna pass, right?
I don't know. I mean, I would support it. I supported the favorable recommendation, but that's my opinion. I don't know everybody else.
Oh, does the board wanna vote? Do you wanna?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Depends
I
on
mean,
what you
all
want, what do you want the answer to be?
What's that?
I said, depends on
Why
what you guys
don't,
want
why
the answer. I think,
don't,
Jeff has some comment.
go ahead, Jeff.
why don't we just vote to approve, just to support Jeff and Joe and all the work that they did, and let the chips fall at town meeting as they fall?
That's what I.
Well, that's what we were saying,
That's what
yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think as a board, we're probably the only board in town that wouldn't support it.
No, I don't,
I mean,
if
we don't want to
you're,
be the outliers, do we?
that's not what's at issue here. So
We're
don't,
not opposing it either.
but don't, please don't be voting to support something if you don't believe in it. Don't do it for our sake. If you're not supportive of it, then I don't want you to fib.
I guess what I'm saying, I have issues with the 5,000 also, but I don't know if that's 5,000.
Well, it's,
I-
yeah, it's
I know-
not realistic.
I know that we have to present something to the state, right, to be in compliance. There's, as far as I know, a lot of people put a lot of work into this to come up with something that we can present the town meeting. Now, it may not pass the town meeting, but at least there's something to start with that we can, and if town meeting passes it, then we can get it approved by the state, and then we can start working with it.
Right.
Is it gonna be a perfect bylaw? Probably not, you know, but it sounds like it's something we have to do, or we preclude ourselves from a lot of stuff that the state.
Well, Jeff, Joe had mentioned earlier, but some of the repercussions already from Milton
Right.
in a week.
Right.
A week from their
Right.
vote was, you know,
Right.
they're already getting squeezed. So
And
it's
so
really
that's-
only being that.
Yeah, that's the only way I'm coming from, is that I know a lot of work's been put in this, and then we do have to do some type of, we have to present something to the state.
And our approval at town meeting, I mean, if we approve it, it's, we're not gonna, you know, push, we're not gonna influence the town meeting. We're all one vote. That's another whole different scenario. I don't know, I haven't heard anything about any, I think I did see something on a Westford thing about, there's more, I think I mentioned this, I think there's gonna be more interest, alienation against perhaps an override than there would for this. I think this is, the override's almost a diversion to this. There's already some rumbling about an override, and people complaining about tax hikes and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So, I think there's gonna be a fight at town meeting.
There's gonna be a fight at town meeting.
The bigger one might not be this one.
It's gonna be much bigger than this.
I think there's gonna be a bigger fight over it. My guess could be wrong.
Oh, I think you're right.
Every time there's an override, there's always a beef, and the
That's
signs out on everybody's front lawn, and the whole fireworks blows up. So this may sweep under the radar while everybody's blowing up over the override. But, and I mean, this is a
All right.
big picture thing, but this goes back to 2021. I mean, there's a housing crisis in the state. Look at the scope of the housing crisis that we're dealing with now with the migrants, and they're taking over the facility at the hotel on Lowell. And, I mean, these aren't the people that are gonna be able to afford these houses.
Right, right.
We're still gonna have a huge housing crisis, even if all this legislation passes, the way the whole country is dealing with the migrant issue and the influx of people coming into the state. And they're looking, you know, the governor's looking for $2 billion to handle this, and the returns for January are way down already. So where the hell's that gonna put us all? I mean, it's a much bigger issue, but in a parochial way, this works for Westford. As far as the housing crisis for the state and whether these 177 communities are gonna help solve it, I'm not sure they will. I think it's gonna be a bigger housing crisis for a lot of people. You look at those income charts, people haven't got anything. And we're spending billions of dollars on people who are migrants that can't even get a work permit. So I think the housing crisis in every state, but we're joining it, is large. But as far as this plan, I think it's a good plan. I think see how it plays out.
All right,
And
do I hear a
I would
motion
support
to-
it, I would support it.
All right, do I hear a motion to for the board to recommend approval of the bylaw,
Town meeting.
town meeting.
I make that, approve that, make that motion.
Is there a second?
How would you write that again?
So I believe it's recommend approval of, I think it's Article 18, the town meeting.
So the zoning board would.
Zoning board would recommend
approving
Article 18.
Article 18.
Okay. I move to approve.
Doesn't say we support, it just says we're recommending approval, because I think we all agree that there are ancillary issues or
Yeah.
concerns.
There always is, yeah.
But this is just be a recommendation. We're gonna get our individual vote at town meeting.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
I second it then.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And I'll tell you, at town meeting, I'm gonna be in Brooklyn at the NCAA's drinking beer. I can't help it, the NCAA's happen every March, and I go every year, so.
Do we have anything else then? No.
That's
Do I have
it.
a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All approve?
Aye.
Oh, do I have to do a roll
Aye.
call? Yeah, yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.